So welcome along to an information session on your theory exam has been cancelled. So what can you do right now to help prepare you for the next theory exam? Right now, we're going to talk about what the steps are. So we'll go through those for you. So a little bit about my background. So for those of you that I don't know, and I did see there's a couple of people on here who know me already. So my name is Nikki Coyne. I work for canfitpro in certification development, but I've actually got a background in nursing a long time ago now. So my eldest daughter's 30 this year. So it's sort of about 28 years ago. Then I made a transition between what I call healthcare healthcare into disease prevention. And I fell in love with fitness, because at the end of life, there's one thing that's a very common theme, or there's two things that people say. One is, I wish I'd told people I loved them more often. And the second thing is, I wish I'd looked after myself better. So when you're hearing that over and over and over again, you begin to understand that prevention is a huge part of what we can do to help people live healthier for longer. And so that made my transition into the fitness industry even easier, because I saw I could carry on caring for people and changing lives, but in a very different way, because palliative care was, like I say, what I was doing when I was nursing, and it is still what I love. So I've been in the industry a long time. My background is very different to my co-presenter, my dear friend, and also my business partner, Stefan. So I'm going to introduce Stefan and just let him talk a little bit about his background and what he does, because it's just huge. So Steph, over to you to talk a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, so my name is Stefan Gustis. I've been in the industry for about 12 years now. Did my degree in kinesiology, specialized in athletic therapy and biomechanics. From there, kind of worked with a lot of high performance athletes, predominantly in volleyball and tennis, and then kind of transitioned into the commercial scene. So kind of throughout my time, I've been working with Olympic lifting athletes, powerlifting athletes, and then everything on the rehab side of it. So, you know, I've got a lot of certifications in Olympic lifting, powerlifting, nutrition, but my passion really lies in kind of the rehab and therapeutic aspects of it. So now I'm working with a lot of people who kind of have these big injuries, and, you know, they're trying to achieve all these fitness and health goals, you know, without, you know, relapsing, going backwards. So yeah, that's kind of where I am right now.
That's it. And we work together. So we are what you call pro trainers. So if you're here because you've done your theory exam, I would suspect that most of you have done the course, in which case you've met your pro trainer. They are your points of call, obviously, and you can contact them during this time between your course and your theory exam. And it will be your pro trainer that will mark your exam. So what we're going to give you are some fantastic tips and tricks on what you can be doing now to prepare yourself for your theory exam.
Yeah, so from my experience, one of the biggest issues is actually time. You do get 3 hours of time, but I definitely find that there are quite a few people who are kind of struggling really, really hard to finish that. So my recommendation, first and foremost, is that you start with the case study, because the case study is where you have to really kind of do a lot of thinking, you know, and really manage what you're going to say, how you're going to write things, so on and so forth. So I would definitely start with the case study, because I feel it takes the most time, and then you can always go into the multiple choice after. Okay, so that would be the first thing that I would kind of say from an exam perspective.
Okay, so definitely you've got 3 hours. I love that, is that start with the study guide, because that's where people do seem to run out of time. And then you've got 100 multiple choice questions. So again, another piece of advice that we will give you is to bring a pencil with you, so that you can go through that multiple choice thing that you color in. And then if you've got time at the end, you can go back and reread some of those questions. So as I said, we're going to run for about an hour. Hopefully my PowerPoint's going to hold up. If it doesn't, I'm going to have to re-download it, but we shall see. We're going to ask that you ask your questions in the chat, and I will check it as I go through. Only panelists are on the video, no participants. That's not my favorite. I love hosting these where you just got a screen full of people. Yeah, a lot of people are uncomfortable with that. So it's just us. We've said 100 multiple choice questions. One of the things I would say is make sure, and we talk about it all the time, that you are 100%, that the answer is 100% true all of the time. If it's, oh, well, that's true half of the time, that's probably not the right answer. We've talked a little bit about the case study. So the case study will cover a little bit more in depth for you. 3 hours, as we said, and 80% or higher. So that 80% is a combination of the two. So you could do really well in your multiple choice and moderately well in your case study and pass, or vice versa. So we combine both of those numbers, and that's your final mark, and it's 80%. Questions come from all chapters in the manual. So you have self-learning chapters. You have areas in that manual, as we talked about in the webinar on Monday, that we don't cover in the course, because they're things that you just have to go away and learn. I can't, Stefan and I and your pro trainer, we can't teach you the bones of the body. We can teach you tips and tricks to help you learn them, but ultimately that's studying. So there are areas of the manual that you do need to study yourself, so that you have that depth of knowledge. So just be aware, your online course, which comes with the manual, and you can access via an email that's sent to you from Human Kinetics, that has your code that gives you access to the online course, that there's a lot more in-depth questions that you get with that online course, and we're going to cover a little bit of that. It goes without saying that read the questions and answer choices carefully. Some of the language is a bit tricky in the pro trainer, in the personal trainer exam. So some of the language might be around all of the following except are true. Yeah, so you're looking for that exception. So just read that question carefully as you go through. Options. So 2 client profiles to choose from. You just need to choose one. And before I move on, Steph, have you got any other tips when it comes to multiple choice yourself?
For me, it's, I cover all the answers. I try to answer the question without seeing options. Because when you start to see multiple options at a time, then your brain starts to kind of go all over the place. So when you're reading it, first thing I do is I cover everything and I read the question. After I read the question, if I know that there is a straightforward answer, you know, then I try to do that in my head. And if I see that option, again, I think they say, I think 70% of the time, your first instinct is right. So if I see that answer, I circle it right away and I move on. If it's a situation where you read the question and it says all except this one, then you do have to look at all of them. But for those questions where it's a straightforward answer, try to answer it in your head first, okay? If you see it there, circle it, and then if it's, you know, and if it's not there, then I would come back to it after.
Yeah, great. I love that tip. Okay, so let's talk about the case study. The case study, you're going to have an option of 2 client profiles to choose from. One will be beginner and one will be intermediate. There's no way that we would ask you to design a program for an advanced athlete. So be assured, as you go through your manual, everything is focused to that beginner or intermediate client. So you can choose, you can pick one. You're required to conduct pre-exercise screening. I'm not sure I like the wording on that. You are required to look at how you would design SMART goals. So rather than screening, I'd say SMART goals is a big part of that initial case study. So looking and reading the blurb on your client, and then identifying what a short-term goal is and a long-term goal is, and then going through those particular SMART areas. Other things you're going to be asked to do within this program: create a program and a resistance training program. Not so much cardio. Cardio is going to be more about looking at those different levels. So being aware of the bioenergetic chapter and the cardiorespiratory concepts will really help you. So just think about what you've been practicing and what you've been doing with your review questions in your study, in your manual, and also in the online course. You would have been answering questions along the lines of, what percentage of heart rate max would you want your beginner to work at? What percentage of heart rate max would you want your intermediate client to work at? And more importantly, what would that look like? So there are questions that will ask you, okay, that's great, you can identify the percentages, but now show us the skills, explain what that would look like. So these are boxes that we ask you to fill in and answer the question. So that's really a little bit about that. And then it's not writing a complete program, it's just asking for percentage heart rates, for example, that you might want to use for a warm-up, what would be suitable for your client and what wouldn't be suitable, and then more importantly, why wouldn't it be suitable? So more than designing a program, it's asking questions around why you would pick to choose a certain thing. So you're not asked to write out a program. I think that's a little bit deceptive there. You're not asked to write out a program in this case study. It's questions relating to how you would design the program. I think that's fair enough to say, would you, Steph?
Yeah, I agree. You're definitely not writing a program on the exam.
No.
You're more or less, it's just a lot of, if anything, the exam is kind of mediating that process. You're answering kind of small questions here or there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so the same,
like small paragraph answers, some of them.
Yeah, and we like point form. Those pro trainers that mark the exam, we love point form. And what I would say to students is that if the box is this big, that means the answer will fit in it. It means that we don't probably want you to write in the box, up the side of the paper, across the top, and then on the back. We don't need an essay. It literally point form, boom, boom, boom. Yeah. So less work for you, less work for us when we mark it. And then we don't have to try and interpret what you were trying to say and then read handwriting, which is another thing. So point form. Same thing with cardio. So recommendations, talking about rate of perceived exertion, talking about percentage heart rates. That's all we're asking for then. Resistance training, sets, reps, rest. Also think about tempo. If you're working with a beginner client with a specific goal that you've identified in that SMART goal, then what tempo would you use? And then flexibility, thinking about the different types of flexibility. And again, questions around, you know, when would you use dynamic? When would you use static? Okay, that's great. You've identified that. What are the benefits of both? And then it will ask you to break those down. So how to prepare for your theory exam. Review each chapter and your notes. Oh, I think my computer's a little bit unstable, a bit like myself today. Review each chapter and your notes. So when you do your course, if you've done your course, hopefully you've written lots of notes, you've got highlighters. One of my daughters is home from university. She has piles of notes that she rewrites each time she reads them. So they get smaller and smaller and smaller, very specific. So you could do, excuse me, something very similar. Focus on the material your pro trainer taught during the course. So of course the theory stuff, also some of the practicals, because as we've just mentioned, the case study is going to be asking you specific questions about, you know, how did your client, when you've done your practicals on the gym floor, how do people react when they're working anaerobically, when you've taken them on the treadmill, when you've taken them on the bike? You know, what did that look like? How did they describe how they felt? So those are all little things that will really help you in good stead when you're doing your theory exam. Pay particular attention at the end of the chapter to summary of important points, key concepts to study, relate that back to what you did practically on your course, and then you've got those review questions at the end of each chapter and case studies. So case studies are great to practice. Obviously use the ones you've got in the manual, use the ones that you've got on the online course because they have a theme that carries through as well. And then when you run out of those, start using family and friends. They will love it. You can practice SMART goal setting with them. You can do a short-term goal. You can do a long-term goal. You can even talk a little bit about what are some of the barriers that these people are going to face when it comes to exercise. Because I can think of one big barrier right now, which is that we can't get to the gym. So, you know, maybe when you're looking and you're working with clients, they can only get to the gym twice a week, or maybe they travel a lot. So what are some things that you could work with clients, or you could prescribe to clients that they could do if they can't get to the gym? So all of those sort of things, those barriers to exercise, would be really key things to study as well. Anything you can think we could add to that, Stefan?
Yeah, I think just when you're reviewing every chapter, definitely know your charts, because that's going to be very, very important. So for me, it's like I would write all the charts on one page. I don't like turning pages at all. So for me, it's I would write like I would handwrite all my charts on one page so that I never have to leave it, and then I would just kind of go through it. But make sure you know your charts; they're there for a reason, especially for the case study. From an anatomy perspective, be really creative with how you learn it. So if you like pen and paper, you know, or if you like coloring books, order a coloring book for all of your anatomy. If you like cue cards, you know, you can get those as well. If you're more of a hands-on person, then stare at yourself in the mirror and try to label where bones and muscles are on you or on a family member. And most importantly, kind of start using the language. I think if you start to not just say, oh, this is my neck, or this is my arm, you start to actually use some of the language, then you'll find learning anatomy is very, very easy. And then for the case study itself, get really good at actually breaking down your case study, because again, all the answers are actually in the case study. So it doesn't matter what you know going into your exam, it's all based on what the information you get from the client, right? So I would spend a good 5, 10, even 15 minutes just breaking down, highlighting things in the case study, getting all that information so that I can actually use it to answer my questions properly. Because I see people writing answers that are right, but they're not right for the client they have. So nothing's right at that point. So make sure you really break down your case study, know who you're working with, because you're going to get a whole page of information. And again, just practice breaking it down. Case studies in the book, practice breaking them down.
Yeah, I love that. Great tips and tricks there. Okay, so your PTS Study Prep Online course. Hold on, Study Prep Online course. Okay. I'm just thinking at the moment. You would have had the option to purchase the Study Prep course. So the Study Prep course is available to people if they want additional help with the self-learning chapters. So that would be your big chapters like bioenergetics, cardiorespiratory concepts, muscular concepts, all of those sort of things. It's an option. You can go back and purchase it now if you choose to, or you may already have it, so check. So it will be lectures and their videos. Within those, within the blocks, you then have anatomy flashcards that you can work with. There's quizzes, there's mock exams, and there's case studies. So if you haven't made that purchase, it may be something you want to think about, because there's lots of questions in there that will give you an idea of the type of question and the wording for the questions in the theory exam. Right there, it gives you the price. That's what I was worried about, because I couldn't remember. So it's $99 plus taxes. And Beth will give you information in the chat box about how you can go ahead and do that. What I don't want this to be confused with is the online course that I've already talked about, which confused everybody on Monday, which is with your purchase of your personal training specialist course. You got a manual, which is important. You got 25 hours in class with a pro trainer, and then you would have received an email that gives you access to a human kinetics online course. That is a must before, hopefully before you get to your theory exam, because there's an awful lot of content that you can go over. It's very interactive and it will really aid you in your studying. But again, if you want a little bit more, the Study Prep course is for you. Studying techniques. I think Steph and I just covered a little bit of that. So deciding on how you best learn and understanding that people are a mixture of all of these. So you're never just one. So, you know, visually, maybe it's you like watching the videos, in which case that study prep course would be great for you, because there are videos of a very attractive English lady with white hair who's going to lecture to you about those theoretical concepts. So if that's your style and you like that lecture and you like to see it all, it's me and then there's a PowerPoint on the side, then maybe that's something you should think about. Maybe you can do it from a book, maybe you can do it from the online course, but just start being a little bit aware of how you absorb information. Auditory, of course, is listening. So I know a couple of people that like to read things and then listen back to it, especially as you go to sleep, because that's when you are absorbing a huge amount of information. So if you wanted to find a novel way, as Stefan said, of learning the bones or the muscles, then maybe, you know, listening to yourself recite about muscles of the arm and then just going through it would be something that you could try. And then kinesthetic, I suspect most of you have a percentage of kinesthetic learning, because that's what makes us the people that we are, which is we want to move and we want to help and all that sort of thing. So we understand by doing. So in which case there is a slew of information out there about, you know, correct posture for a squat, correct posture for a lunge. So just listening to that sort of thing. And you can do the same thing, which is like move. And as Stefan said, stand in front of the mirror and poke yourself, or anybody else that's in the house, as long as you get consent, obviously. Give them a good old squeeze and see if you can identify muscles. See if you can identify, oh my goodness, well, that's where that bone starts and that's where it finishes. That it must be the humerus then. And now I understand that it fixes, and the bones coming off that are your radius and ulna. So all of those things, and I agree 100% with what Stefan said, is that this is a process of learning by doing. You want to start using the language so it becomes second nature, even if you have to stop and look something up and then say it, because that's how you are definitely going to start using professional language. And this is a professional. You are going to be called a fitness professional, and as such you will be expected, and you will be I don't want to say admired, that's the wrong word, but you will have credibility when you're using terms as anterior, posterior, superior, inferior, or medial and lateral. Yeah, so that needs to be something that you start using very, very frequently. So is there anything else you can think to add to that one, Stefan?
No, that sounds about right. I think just for like kinesthetic, I think if you're at home doing home workouts, you know, that would be a really good idea. That's also a great way to learn anatomy. If you're looking at major chest muscles, major back muscles, or leg muscles, etc., you know, try and actually take those terms and put them into movement. You know, if it says the glute maximus is hip extension, actually in your house, go do hip extension and start to put those pieces together. Okay? Or if you're working out at home a lot right now, just start to link some of those terms together. Because it's going to help a lot. You know, I find that the people who can really link their anatomy to their movements, they do very, very well. You know, because you're spending less time thinking about it, because you just kind of know what it is. Yeah, and I think just like visual and audio, it's just find multiple ways to learn it. You know, have charts in your house, use diagrams. Diagrams are huge for learning anatomy, or you can just listen to somebody else talk about anatomy and get comfortable hearing these words over and over again.
Oh yeah, there's some great things that you can listen to online. Where have I gone? Oh, there we go. That will help you use it, and yeah, I think that's one of the best ways to learn. Okay, visual learners. We talked a little bit about these. Read and highlight key concepts in the manual. Write study notes, rewrite them, highlight them. Use flashcards. Yep. Auditory learner, we talked about playing back. Have a friend read to you. Oh, that would be nice. Parts of the manual and your study notes. You can even ask questions from those. Kinesthetic, we just talked about. We're learning by doing. Yeah, all of those. And yeah, working with family members, practicing using language, all of those things. So some top tips, let's just make sure we've covered these. Retain more with multiple methods of study. Yep, because we're all a mixture of the two. Write the notes and read aloud, record and listen, study each day. Again, like we've said, we know looking at the statistics of people who are most successful going through this process are the ones that do the course. They then do not put their book down. Every day, they maybe set aside an hour, maybe 2 hours to go through and reread certain chapters, read their notes, as we've said, all the different tips here, right up until the exam. Because the minute you put it down, remember teabag analogy, everything starts dissipating because life gets so busy and all of a sudden you can't remember what those muscles are. So try and allow yourself an hour a day just to keep up with all of that. Time frame longer than 3 to 5 weeks. Yeah, we've said that. If it's longer, then don't worry. Right now, you have access to this. We're giving you some really top information. Just keep it all there. Just keep it percolating in a little tea bag, and we will be able to let you know when you can get into that theory exam as soon as it's safe to do so. Get by with a little help from your friends. Yes, so maybe it is something like this, like a Zoom party, where you can invite people on. You can get them to ask you questions. Something that we see a lot as pro trainers in our courses is that at the end of a course, people tend to set up, whether it's WhatsApp groups or whether it's Facebook, private Facebook groups, so that people from your course can all get together and you've got your own little study course, study group. So that's a great idea to do that. We've talked about family and friends quizzing you, and then connecting with those, oh my goodness, we've done, connecting with those people that were on the course with you. So I don't think there was anything else we could have added, but what I'd love to do is to open up to anybody who has any questions, and we can address those questions. So if there's something you want more information on, then please let us know, and we will do that before we go into the now and always stay safe, Toronto. Okay, let me look at those chat boxes and see what I can find. Can you tell I'm a little stir crazy today? Okay. There's a little something on there about accommodations for people with learning things that they would like to take into consideration. Yep, canfitpro has a whole department that deals with that. That's not with your pro trainer. That will go through accommodations at canfitpro.com. So if you would like to send that in, then that will all be taken care of for you before you get to your theory exam. So that's not a pro trainer question. Accommodations at canfitpro. If you have EIP, isn't it, or something like that, something with a learning condition, by all means. Somebody saying they missed the first part of the presentation. Yeah, you will be kept informed by canfitpro when you can reschedule, as soon as it is safe to do so. Oh, Stefan, this one's for you. It's an anatomy question. Chest press. Regarding rotator cuff muscles, describe agonist, antagonist, and synergist muscles. Well, we cannot give you the answers, and I'm just trying to think if that is a question in the exam. I don't think it is, but how would you like to recommend?
I'll just answer the question, but like when you think about a chest press, again, first you have to know the difference between agonist, antagonist, and synergist. So your agonist is your primary mover. Your antagonist is the one who is, resisting set movement or opposing set movement. And then a synergist is simply any other muscle that assists the process. So the synergist can be hundreds, right? You can say the rest of the body, to be honest with you. So we look at the chest press, again, it's kind of in the name there. So, your pec major would be your agonist for a chest press. You know, you can argue that the lats, the rhomboids, the traps would be your antagonist, okay? And then your synergist would be anything else. So that would where kind of the rotator cuff would follow in. It is, you know, they're the muscles stabilizing the shoulder joint for the chest press. They're not actually doing that movement, right? So if you look at what your rotator cuffs do, you'll see a lot of internal, external rotations, minimal retractions, minimal protractions, right? But it does not pertain to an actual chest press. So long answer short, your rotator cuffs would be a synergist.
I love that. And I'm just going to put, somebody else has just said, I've heard that you need to know agonists and antagonists. Yes, you do, to come into the fitness industry. So yeah, you do, yes, need to know agonists and antagonists. And of course, it's all about how movement is created. So you've got to know what is the prime mover and what is supporting the movement. And as Steph said, what is the antagonist? So most definitely you need to know the muscles of the body, the movements that they create, the bones that they cross, and yeah, the names of the bones before the exam and before you come in.
If you look at it practically, I think that's the easiest way to learn it, because antagonist, agonist, and doing all that stuff, it can be a lot to memorize as well. But if you're in a gym setting or in a workout setting at all, like if you're doing chest, you know back is opposing, and then you just kind of put them together. You know your biceps and your triceps are opposing. You know your quads and your hamstrings, things like that. So start to look at your actual exercises and label your agonists, or know your agonists, say them out loud while you're doing these exercises. That's another really easy way to kind of remember. Like instead of writing it down on a chart, if you don't like doing that, do your workouts and then label your agonists and antagonists. And remember, like there can be more than one agonist and multiple antagonists, right? So, you know, it's just, you can kind of play around with that, right?
Yeah, and I agree 100%. And I would also say that while you've got time, you need to start thinking about this in your own workout. And it's a bit like we talked about yesterday, which is where on the course, the light begins to come on, because we teach you, we do very practical stuff when it comes to movement and assessing movement. And your pro trainer probably got you to come to the front of the class, or somebody, and then showed you, you know, as somebody did a chest press, they're saying, look, what does it look like? What does it feel like? So that goes back to our auditory, visual, kinesthetic. So you've got that knowledge. So now when you're at home doing your own workouts, you need to start thinking. And that will then lead you very nicely onto your practical exam, I think, which we're doing on Friday, which is, that's what we look for in the practical exam, is that we're going to be looking for how are you communicating that to your client. You know, you need to practice these things yourself. Listen to that internal voice that's correcting you, that's probably saying, oh, hold on, bring my shoulders down, let my lats take hold of my scapula, retract it a little bit. So you're doing that self-talk, and now it's a case of getting it out there. But as you're doing that, we want you to start thinking about, okay, so as I do retract my scapula, hold on, what muscle is contracting, what's creating the movement, and to do that, which muscle is lengthening? Yeah, and then you can start thinking about which joint does it cross? Is that concentric? Is it eccentric? All of those things. But you've got the time right now to do it at home. Okay, I think we've answered all the questions. Okay, yeah, we've answered all the questions. So it leaves me to say, Steph, unless you've got anything else you want to add?
No, just study. You know, it's just study. Don't take it lightly. Again, like you're going to be responsible for taking care of another person. And I think a lot of people kind of take personal training or fitness jobs kind of lightly. Again, someone is literally trusting you with their body. You know, you only have one, right? So don't take it lightly. Please know all your information.